Hello, everyone. Tom Del and welcome to Politics in Perspective. I think I have a great show for you this week. Two old friends will be joining me. State Senator Tony Strickland, who helped put voter ID on the ballot, is going to talk about the implications of that and all things California. Our political roundup will get into the Democrat Civil War in California and why that matters. Also, Evan Sayet, who is used to be a liberal but wrote books and now understands the mind of a liberal, is going to talk about where the American liberal is today and what implications that carries for us. But first, I want to talk about my opening statement. But even before that, I want to thank Ex American News, WorldviewTube.com. Of course, I'm on Yahoo. Yahoo, listen to me. I'm on YouTube and Rumble, and you can get the full set of shows at politicalvanguard.com. And please join me on Substack. I get my writings there. I publish every week at least one or two things. So join me there. All right. So turns out Donald Trump, who ran on ending wars, will go down as one of the four most important foreign policy presidents in American history. The first one, of course, is James Monroe and the Monroe Doctrine, basically saying America will stick to the Western Hemisphere and you need to stay out of it, which was an interesting proclamation at the time, given America didn't have a standing army under James Monroe. So it was a bold statement. If he had been challenged in that, we'd have to see what would have happened, but of course he wasn't. Then number two would be FDR. Now, of course, World War I and Wilson got us into World War I saying he'd keep us out of it, but the United States retreated after that back to the United States. It set up the League of Nations, but didn't join the League of Nations. It had a large army, but then it disbanded the army for all intents and purposes. It was a big change, though, from isolationist America to joining a world war. Then FDR came along. That changed everything. Not only did we go to war, a massive world war, but we created a massive U.S. Army. And two important differences to Wilson, which is why FDR is so much more impactful, is that we joined the United Nations after help forming it. And we didn't reduce our army next to nothing. We maintained an immense military and started our military presence around the globe. Excuse me. So he, along with Monroe, are in that top four. And of course, Ronald Reagan, who helped bring about the fall of the Soviet Union and changed world politics dramatically with the eventual fall of the Berlin Wall, which was caused by the defeat of the Soviet Empire. Yes, they extended their empire too far and their economy couldn't sustain it. And the Reagan, not the military buildup, but the economic buildup broke the back of the Soviet Union, and the world changed. And instead of a bipolar world, we now live in a very diverse, and power isn't just between two great superpowers. Instead, there's one great superpower and a very complex world. So, Monroe, FDR, Reagan, and now Trump. And you saw what he did with Venezuela. We see what a success that was. Venezuela is now returning to the Western world. At least it is as of this show. We'll see what happens in Cuba. But let's take a look at Trump's Middle East. And if we could bring up the graphic, the world has changed. This is a story that came out this past week about the UAE leaving OPEC. OPEC has been a dominant existence since the 1970s, controlling oil flow, making sure the Middle East, with its black gold, would be able to have an enormous impact in the world. But OPEC is fracturing, and that has great implications. So if we can come with the next graphic and we can talk about Trump's Middle East and how things have changed. Now, when Trump was in there the first time, there were the Abraham Accords, and he was moving the Middle East to a more peaceful existence after the ridiculous policies of Barack Obama in funding Hamas and funding the Iran. So Trump moved to a more peaceful footing. Then Biden was in office, started the refunding of Iran, and resulted in October 7th and the rise of, or perhaps the height of Iran's influence in the world, the height of Hamas's influence in the world, and the same maybe of Hezbollah. But that has changed. Trump defunded Iran, which marginalized Hamas and Hezbollah, along with the fact that Trump freed up Israel to go after Hamas and go after Hezbollah. And that has had dramatic effects. I mean, think about it. Hamas used to dominate the news. Hezbollah fired constant rockets at Israel. People need to remember that for many, many years, Israel would be hit with rockets every single day. That has all changed. Hamas now is greatly diminished. The fate of Gaza is not the same fate that it would have had under Biden. The same is true of Lebanon. The president of Lebanon is openly taking on what remains of Hezbollah. That is a big difference. So Hamas has been marginalized. Hezbollah has been defanged in significant part, of course, because Trump didn't stop the Israeli military as the Biden administration did. He said it about his business. And of course, we now have the Iran war, where Iran's military capability has been incredibly diminished. It does not have the same abilities it had 3 months ago. And it is a different regime. I'm not going to say that the Iran regime is tilting west by any statement now, but what is there, it's not even certain exactly who has long-term capability to rule Iran from what had been. We don't even know if the new Ayatollah actually is in charge. We do know that their guard it has enormous influence, but Iran is not the same place. It doesn't have the same power. And then, of course, we have the change with the UAE. People need to understand that it is the UAE that is being attacked significantly by Iran. Why is that? Because the UAE has a port outside the Straits of Hormuz. It can pump out oil, fill tankers, and satisfy world demand or parts of it without the influence of Iran. Now, Iran has been attacking the UAE, attacking some of their infrastructure in an attempt to stop this. But this is a new existence, and you can look for the UAE to even spend more money to make them less at risk because of the acts of Iran if Iran's regime or some element remains in place. All of this because President Trump has changed the cards in the Middle East. And so as we go forward, if we could bring the graphic back up, I did leave one open issue, which is number 5. Where does all of this end up? But here's what I do know. Marco Rubio is on TV this week saying, if Iran had a nuclear weapon, what would their ability to close down the Straits of Hormuz, or something even beyond that, what would their capability be? Could they blackmail the world? Rubio said there was nothing that could be done about that. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it is also a very real issue. If Iran's willing to kill tens of thousands, over 45,000, who knows how many, if they're willing to kill their own people in that regard, surely they have no regard for people outside of Iran. All of this is part of the Trump, what I call the Trump's Middle East, but now places him among the most consequential foreign policy presidents in American history. You have James Monroe, you have FDR, you have Reagan, and now you have Donald Trump. And we'll have to see what lies ahead, but there's no denying at this stage how consequential he is. So that's my opening statement. If you can please join me on Substack, and you can get these articles, and of course my book, The Lessons of the American Civilization and the Divided Era. And we will be right back with State Senator Tony Strickland, who will talk about why voter ID is so important in California and what it could mean for the United States. We'll be right back, and thank you. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that opening comments. So let's talk consequential, because one of my best friends and persons who's consequential in my life, who told me don't run for office, you should stay on the airwaves because you can make a difference that way. But one of the most consequential Republicans of the last 30 years in California is now State Senator Tony Strickland. So let's bring Tony in there. Tony has made a huge difference. Just ask Ray Davis, who had presidential ambitions until Tony took him down and sued him for not disclosing his energy contracts. And that was the beginning of the end. But now, in this very interesting year, California is going to have voter ID on the ballot. And so, Tony, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here. I tell people all the time that the beginning of the turnaround for California starts with voter ID. What do you think?
I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. First of all, thanks for having me. I really, truly appreciate it. You are making a huge impact and a huge difference, and I'm proud to call you my friend. So thanks for having me on. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think the turnaround will be the voter ID. And it's something that's very simplistic. The other side is going to try to confuse everybody. But in our internal polling, this is over 68% approval rated as we go into the November election. Supermajority of independents and Republicans support voter ID, and a majority of Democrats support voter ID. And again, it's a part of our everyday life. You need an ID to get on a plane. You need an ID to open up a bank account. You need an ID to get prescription medication. I've used my ID already. We're just starting out today. I've already used my ID once. And so it's part of our everyday life, and we're not reinventing the wheel. 36 other states have voter ID laws, as well as almost every other country around the world. There's no reason why we couldn't bring voter integrity to here in California. And I do believe that's a game changer in terms of turning around the state and making it golden again.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit more. what are the nuts and bolts of this particular initiative? What will people have to do going forward? Do they, when they register, do they use it? What's the nuts and bolts of it?
Well, one, we're going to clear our voter rolls and now make sure that we can prove that you're a U.S. citizen in order to vote. Number two, you get to use a form of a government issued identification of your choice. You use the last four digits of that ID and you utilize that when you vote by mail. We're not getting rid of vote by mail, as the Democrats are trying to put out. When I say Democrats, I mean legislative Democrats, not the Democrats in your district. Um, and folks like Gavin Newsom are like trying to dissuade people, but no, you can vote by mail. All you have to do is be able to put that same identification, all those four numbers, on your ballot. Again, identification that you choose, or when you go to the polls, you show an ID. It's very simplistic. Another part of the initiative that I'm very proud of is now we're going to have and require that all 58 counties do a public audit of their voter rolls every 2 years. One of the biggest problems that we have in California is outdated voter rolls. The Department of Justice has sued because we had 9 million out of date voters, and I believe we got 3 or 4 million cleared up, but we still need to do more. We're going the right direction because the Department of Justice is going after this. But that's a key component of this initiative, is to be able to clean up the voter rolls every 2 years and do a public audit.
Yeah, I have a neighbor up the street who gets 3 ballots. An old administrative person in my office would get 4 or 5, including the people who lived a decade before. And
And what
that's
could go
just,
wrong when you do all mail and you don't clean up the voter rolls and you have ballot harvesting? And so we need to bring about voter integrity to California, and this initiative will get it done. And I'm really excited about the campaign too, because we went around all 58 counties and we had Democrats, Independents, and Republicans sign this. And from my understanding, it's the fastest qualified volunteer initiative in California history. We were well done over a month ahead of the deadline, and we had 1.35 million signatures, and we turned them in well ahead of the deadline because we knew we had a grassroots army in all 58 counties. And now we're going to take that same grassroots army that helped us qualify this initiative to help us pass this initiative. And so I think that's going to be fantastic as we go into the November 2026 election.
so if that was on the ballot alone, this would be an important election. But that's not all that's on the ballot this fall. We have what in my closing segment, I'm going to talk about the Democrat Civil War and the race for governor. There is the billionaires tax, which is a lie, right? Because it's going to fall on the middle class.
Correct.
And there's other things. So take off. Where do you want to go? Do you want to talk about the Democrat Civil
Well,
War or
let's
the
talk about the
billionaires
governor's
tax?
race. I mean, the governor's race, where we are today is 2/3 of Californians say we're on the wrong track. Albert Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And when you see these debates and you see the Democrats they put forward to be the next governor of California, and they ask them to give Governor Newsom a grade, and when they're getting like B pluses and A's for homelessness, we're on the wrong track and continue down that same path if you elect any one of those Democrats. I can't believe that's the best they have to offer. Who's running on their side? And even Paul Mitchell, who's the numbers guy over on the Democratic side, said there's a over 20% chance that two Republicans can make the runoff. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. And the fact of the matter is, now's our opportunity because 2/3 of Californians say we're on the wrong track. And I'm partisan here. I'm co-chair of Steve Hilton's campaign. I think he's the best situated to know exactly what to do day one when he gets sworn in as the next governor of California to turn this around and make it a golden state once again.
Okay, have you normally the Democrats get their act together? Yeah, there's a little sparring in the beginning, and they coalesce around someone. Now, I call them the Democrats the seven dwarves that they have up there. You like that? You're going to use that, are you
Oh
not?
yeah, I like it.
Uh, but they say Swallow stuck his head up too high, he got taken down. They're going after Becerra with lots of knives in the back. Are you somewhat surprised at this intensity of how they're going after each other?
No, I'm not. It's a blood sport, as you know, and they're fighting for power. And here, each one of these candidates have a different faction or different slice of the Democratic coalition. Katie Porter has a far left, Elizabeth Warren kind of faction. Tom Steyer is more like a Bernie and AOC kind of Democrat. You know, Javier Becerra and Antonio Villaraigosa kind of have that like Latino, Los Angeles kind of faction within the party, and so they're all slicing a little part of that base that they have, and they're all going after each other because it's about power. That's why I mean they're seeing ads now that Steyer's going against Javier Becerra, and then Becerra and a lot of outside groups are going after Steyer because if you think Gavin Newsom's bad, it's Gavin Newsom's on steroids if Steyer got across the finish line because he is a pure socialist. And then you have all the other candidates, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that falls out. But the very fact of the matter is, I still think Matt Mahan is going to spend some money and grow and get some of that undecided vote, and so it's going to be very interesting. This next month is going to be very interesting. It's the first time in a governor's race in California in a long time where you didn't know who kind of the front runner was. It's really wide open. And I'm proud of the campaign that Steve Hilton's run thus far. I believe he's sticking to policy, and he's been remarkable in the debates. If everybody watched the debates, Steve Hilton would win going away. But not everybody watches the debates, and so we'll see what happens. But I'm very excited, enthusiastic about the opportunity to turn around California.
Well, let's talk about that because you've been in and out of Sacramento. We forgot to mention that as mayor of Huntington Beach, you put voter ID on the ballot there and how consequential that was. It's the forerunner to what's going on today. You have spoken for years in Sacramento about how the Democrats are strangling the economy. Now we have the highest unemployment rate, the highest poverty rate. We could go on and on and on. And yet here we are with a so-called billionaires tax. Tell us about that.
Well, if you want a budget deficit in perpetuity, just pass a billionaire's tax. What it does is tax people who have savings, people who invest and are wise with their money. It's not just billionaires, but I will tell you, Fox Business has reported we've already lost $1 trillion in the California economy because of this actually just being proposed. Because what happens is a lot of people who create the jobs now they're leaving the state of California, and it's not just their wealth that they've created through their entrepreneurial spirit, but they're now not investing in these companies, and well, they are investing in the companies, but they're just not investing in California. So not only are they leaving, but they're taking their companies and jobs with them. Tom, this is the first time in California history since the gold rush more people are leaving the state than coming in. And let that sink in for a second. We live in an oasis. Our weather is the best. We have 6 of the top 10 public universities here. We have a diversified economy. The only thing going wrong with California is in Sacramento and the policies of Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom. I always say we're 1 liter away from prosperity again in California. And again, 2/3 of Californians say we're on the wrong track. So hopefully they vote and give someone like Steve Hilton a chance, because I do think if we get that opportunity, we're going to turn the state around and show that conservative leadership does work. We showed that it worked in Huntington Beach by way of example. In Huntington Beach, crime was down dramatically, homelessness was down dramatically. We closed a big budget deficit without raising taxes, and we gave law enforcement the tools they need to keep us safe. And so we proved that conservative leadership works in a big city of Huntington Beach. We can prove that we could do that here in the state of California. Just give us the opportunity.
All right. It's twice or three times you said on the wrong track. So let's talk about the wrong track, high speed rail. how, how do we kill that?
Well, my dad always taught me the best way to get out of a ditch is to stop digging, and we need to pull a plug on this high-speed rail. We had a informational hearing last Monday, and it didn't go well because the fact of the matter is, when you look at where we are on this thing, it's the most wasteful government program in world history. It started out as a $33 billion project. Now it's projected to be a $231 billion project. But by the way, the nonpartisan legislative analyst said none of that money counts for borrowing. And Tom, as you know, when you borrow money, you have to actually pay more money back. So it's higher than 231 billion. Now they went from two tracks to one. So now they have to share their track with freight as well as Metrolink. So is that really high speed? I'll remind everybody here, you know, 231 billion and growing is almost our entire state budget for one project. Think about all the shovel-ready projects around the state of California that we can fund, as well as lowering the gas tax in California and lower our gas prices by $1.08 a gallon, $1,100 per family. This one project, we all know, everybody in this building knows, will never be built as proposed to the people of California. And even some of my legislative Democrats who've been champions and trying to fight for the high-speed rail, in that committee, all the facts came out, and one of my colleagues who has been for it in the past said this is a disaster. And I pointed out, I've been saying it's a disaster for years now. But now it's time to pull the plug because we don't have anywhere near the money, the financing, and it's short on cash flow. And there's many things in this proposal that go against state law, and many things in this proposal that will never pass the legislature. For example, they're talking about taking away what we call the TIF. Local governments rely on that tax resources for funding of local police and fire, and the high-speed rail wants to take that money. And I know that part of the proposal will never pass the legislature. So it's not surprising that the new plan got tabled, and they're going to bring it up again late May. But as a nonpartisan legislative analyst said, this is just an unrealistic plan. It's time to pull the plug.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a major rail system in America that isn't subsidized after it gets built. You look at BART in the Bay Area is failing, and now they want to bail it out. So the 240 is not only doesn't include lending, but future bailouts because people aren't going to use it.
Correct. In fact, Tom, I said sarcastically on the floor of the budget last year, I gave credit to Senator Weiner. I said anybody that can bring home the bacon and come up with $750 million to bail out the BART system when we have a multi-billion-dollar deficit, obviously is bringing home the bacon for their district. And so congratulations, Senator Weiner. It's unbelievable how much money we're spending bailing out the BART, as well as you said, because of a lack of financing, a lack of ridership.
All right, Tony, we're run out of time here. Tell people where they can find you and importantly, what they can do for voter ID going forward.
Well, we need your help with voter ID. All politics is local. And so if you can organize with your local Republican Party or organization to help turn out the vote and spread the word, because this is the game changer in California. And make sure you turn out and vote and get your friends to go out and vote. Those who turn out are the ones that actually make a difference. And then in terms of mine, just go to @Senator Tony Strickland and follow me. But this is not about me. It's about the future of California, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we turn the state around. Look, I grew up in California. My kids are here. They deserve to grow up in a California that I grew up in with more opportunity than I had. And right now, it's the first time in California history where that's in question. And that's why it matters who you elect. And so hopefully we get some strong leaders in. We have serious issues here. We need serious issues to solve these problems. And I'm happy to be part of the team that's going to turn around California.
All right, Tony, always a pleasure having you on. Thanks for the update. And certainly before the election, we'll have you on again. Thanks so much.
Tom, you're the best. Thank you so much for having me. And you're such a great friend. And I just think the world of you and everything you've done. And I'm just proud to call you my friend.
All right. Definitely got to show that to my wife. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Hey, welcome back to Politics in Perspective. Today, I thought it would be a good idea to have an old friend of mine come on the show, a former Democrat, even dare I say liberal, who saw the light. And he's Evan Sayet. He's a comedian, he's a satirist, he's a part philosopher. And he's quite understanding of the world we live in. He wrote a book years ago that did phenomenally well. He spoke at Heritage and it went viral. And his book is called The Kindergarten of Eden: How the Modern Liberal Thinks. So, Evan, welcome to the program. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, Thomas. Good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you all, kind of. So, I thought about you because I, regularly I'm asked what's going on in the left. And I have said for years that once the socialist mentality, the class warfare mentality, grabs hold of a party, it doesn't let go. So I thought of you because this week, with regard to assassinations and the like, the grip seems to be getting tighter. So maybe you could tell people a little bit about why you wrote your book. Um, and then sort of update us since it's been a few years since the book was written.
Sure. Maybe I'll just give a little bit of my history as far as politics goes, because look, I'm a New York City born Jew in the entertainment industry, so the default factory setting was I voted Democrat. I didn't know very much about things, and to be honest with you, when we were growing up, several generations back, there really wasn't a lot to think about. America was strong, America was good, America was prosperous, and so you went about your life. But I knew basically what most Democrats know, and really all you needed to know, which is that Democrats are good and Republicans are evil. All right, I was good. I'm a good person, so I must be a Democrat. I knew that Democrats like peace, and I like peace, so I must be a Democrat. Democrats like air. I like air. We Republicans pollute the air, so I must be a Democrat. And then along comes 9/11. All right. And 9/11 didn't surprise me. Okay. Obviously, I didn't know the date. Obviously, I didn't know the target, the amount of carnage and how successful the terrorists were. Sickened me and sickens me to this day. But even as a brain dead liberal, I knew just enough about the world to know that the same people who were murdering the Jews of Israel for no other reason than that they were the closest infidels, who were murdering Hindus in India for no other reason than that they were the closest infidels, who were murdering Christians in Africa for no other reason that they were the closest infidels, would, when they could figure out a way across these oceans, they'd come and get the big infidel, the great Satan. Of course they would. So 9/11 didn't surprise me. What surprised me is what I metaphorically call 9/12. All right, that's the days, the weeks, the months, and the years after 9/11 and the response of the people on the political left. All right, the idea that we deserved it, that it was the chickens coming home to roost, that the way to prevent further attacks was to be nicer to the terrorists. Well, this was insane to me. And so, for the first time in my life, I had to think about what it means to be on the political left, what it means to be a Democrat. I had to think through the issues. And Tom, I have an expression: the first time you think is the last time you're a Democrat.
Mm.
All right. And so, as I began to think about the issues themselves, I began to wonder why so many good, smart, decent, loving, generous, caring people, my friends, my colleagues, my neighbors, why it is they reject fact and reason and side only and always with evil over good, wrong over right, ugly over beautiful, profane over profound. And I came to understand that they have this ideology that started in the 1960s and grew progressively worse with each generation that requires them. It is a moral obligation to reject fact and reason because thinking was determined to be a hate crime. All right. Anything that you believe, anything that I believe, anything that anybody believes is going to be so tainted by your prejudices we all have based on the color of your skin, the nation of your ancestry, your height, your weight, your sex. Anything you believe is going to be so tainted by your bigotries that the only way not to be a bigot is to never think at all. So thinking actually itself was for all intents and purposes outlawed. And the line I use is that in order to eliminate discrimination, the modern liberal has opted to become utterly indiscriminate. The thing is that only gets
Let's say that again. Say that again.
In order to eliminate the evils of discrimination, racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, in order to eliminate discrimination, the modern liberal has opted to become utterly indiscriminate. He is not allowed to believe that any person, any culture, any religion, any form of governance, any familial construct, any work of art, any work of literature, anything is better or worse than any other.
Yeah, okay.
All right, now that only gets us halfway there. Because if he were truly indiscriminate, sometimes he'd be right, sometimes he'd be wrong. Most of the time, he'd fall somewhere in the middle. So why is it the modern liberal sides only and always with evil, failure, and wrong? Well, that's because indiscriminateness of thought does not lead to indiscriminateness of beliefs. Indiscriminateness of thought leads to siding with evil, failure, and wrong, because if nothing is better than anything else, if no culture, no religion, no form of governance, if nothing is better than anything else, success is unjust. Why should a person, a nature, and a culture, religion, why should something succeed if it's not better than anything else? The flip side of that is that failure, as proved by nothing other than the fact that it has failed, serves as proof positive that somehow the failure has been victimized. Right? After all, why should a person, a culture, a nation, a religion fail if it's not worse than anything else? Then it's simply by extension. If success and failure is proof of injustice, then great success and great failure is proof positive of a great injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And long and sustained and exceptional success and failure proves the greatest injustices of all. So why is it they hate Israel? It's not because Israel's the worst nation on the planet, far from it. It's because they are so extraordinarily successful. Why do they love the Palestinians? How can you have queers for Palestine? Because they don't discriminate between the religions, they don't discriminate between the behaviors, they don't discriminate between the forms of governance. All they know is that Israel is exceptionally successful and the Palestinians are exceptionally failed. Therefore, one must be exceptionally oppressive and the other exceptionally victimized. So why do they hate America? It's not because America is the worst nation in the history of the world. In fact, quite the opposite. It's because we are the most exceptionally successful nation in the history of the world. And it's the success itself with no other judgment. It is simply the fact that we are extraordinarily successful that proves to them that we are the source of extraordinary injustice.
Okay, so 9/11 occurs.
Yes, sir.
Many innocents are killed. Unbelievable number of innocents are being killed in Africa today. How does the modern liberal look away from murder?
Well, twofold. One, they just completely ignored facts play no part whatsoever in how the modern liberal, now we would call them the woke, but in how the modern liberal thinks, facts play no role whatsoever. So they have no interest. Why were they so pro-Palestinian but not pro the Iranian people? All right. The only reason is because the Jews are part of Western civilization. They are part of the Judeo-Christian storyline and heritage. And the Judeo-Christian Christendom in general. Western civilization is unparalleled in its success and in its goodness and its greatness. I mean, almost everything that you can think of systemically that is good has been a product of Judeo-Christianity. All right, whether it's trial by jury, whether it's the scientific method, whether it's human rights, what across the board, whatever, and so because the Jews are successful, they ignore the murder of the Jews and then are outraged by when the Jews go and defend and protect themselves. So it has nothing to do with murder or not murder. It has to do with if something from Western civilization is under attack, they ignore it at best. And if something that is not Western comes under attack, they are outraged beyond it's what's appropriate.
So the title of the book that created this sensation, "The Kindergarten of Eden: How the Modern Liberal Thinks." Why? Please tell people why you said the Kindergarten of Eden.
Right. Well, the woke movement is a utopian movement. Now, in any revolution, there are going to be multiple motivations involved in teaming up. So yeah, there are some Marxists, but my cousin who is woke, he's not a Marxist. He didn't read Das Kapital and decide, yes, that's the economic system. That he's an idiot. He didn't read anything. He doesn't need to read anything. And in fact, just at this time, in the middle of this woke revolution, their march through the institutions, a book came out called "All I Ever Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten." And you'll notice that the author, Robert Fulghum, he doesn't say everything he knows. He knows the woke may know a good number of things, but they don't really need to know. And what are the rules of kindergarten? The rules of kindergarten are indiscriminate. Every child gets a sticker. It doesn't matter how talented your artwork may or may not be. Every child gets a cookie, but no child may ever have two. And so they don't need to know any of the knowledge, any of the information, any of the facts. And they think that they're creating a utopia. All right. And the utopia really is the Garden of Eden before the apple, when good and evil was unknown. There was no knowledge of good and evil. And they believe if they can rid the world of the knowledge of good and evil, make everything equally good and equally right, if they can rid in fact, my original speech to the Heritage Foundation was called "Regurgitating the Apple: How the Modern Liberal Thinks." If they can only get us to regurgitate the apple, to give up all knowledge of good and evil, right and wrong, better and worse, truth and lies, and the secular version of the Garden of Eden is kindergarten. And so thus the name, the Kindergarten of Eden.
Okay, so the left is pulling farther left. Once the class warfare wing of the party grabs hold of it, it doesn't let go. But it's being fought. You were on with Bill Maher. He speaks out often about the excesses of the left. And he Queers for Palestine T-shirts and the like. Is it possible? I mean, and you've traversed his community and ours, those on the right who believe in the values of the American Revolution.
Just very, very quickly, I wrote his television show, Politically Incorrect, for many years.
So, which I know you are. Put one drink in you, and I laughed a lot. You are very funny. So what where does he go? So, but here's what, because you made you said it's utopian, right? Well, you never get to utopia. Instead, you get all these cavalcade of problems, and the state fails. So, where when you ask Bill Maher, well, Bill, I understand why you want these things, but when they don't materialize, when do you decide, okay, going down that avenue isn't the right thing to do?
Okay, there are a couple of things here. One, the political left is not pulling further or harder to the left than it ever did. What happened was over the last, let's say in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the last of the countervailing forces have died off. All right, the last of the great generations that at least could offer in the schools a counterpoint in their classrooms, they've either retired or died off or been pushed out. So it's the same ideology. It's just ossified into a harder cancer, a harder tumor, because there's no. This is what they wanted from the very beginning. I mean, there was an attempted revolution, a violent revolution in the 1960s. All right, the terror group led by William Ayres, called the Weather Underground. Ayres' wife, Bernadine Dorn, took to the steps in front of a bank of microphones and said, "Hi, I'm Bernadine Dorn, and I'm here to read to you a declaration of war." And they declared war, and they committed acts of war. They bombed, they kidnapped, they murdered, but they couldn't get anybody to join their revolution. And the problem was too many people had seen the real world. Too many people had either fled Nazism, fled communism, or had gone over there to fight those things and then came home. And so people knew America had its issues. America was far from perfect in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, but they still knew that they didn't want to overthrow this country and replace it with the things that they had seen elsewhere. And in one of my books, I tell this story about the great boxer Muhammad Ali, and he had a fight in Africa. The rumble in the jungle, they called it. And he went over and set up training camp in Africa, as opposed to training here and flying over for the fight. So he spent a month in Africa. And when he came back, the media, the press asked him, "Muhammad, what'd you think of the continent of your ancestors?" Now, Tom, keep in mind, this was not only a black man from the Jim Crow South, but by this point he had converted to Islam. So this was a black Muslim man from the Jim Crow South. And when they said to him, "Muhammad, what did you think of Africa?" He said, quote, "Thank God my granddaddy got on that boat." Right? So they tried to foment a revolution in the 60s and they failed. They couldn't get anybody to join them. And so they went underground and they went on what is known as the Long March through the institutions. If they couldn't take over the government fast, immediately with a violent revolution, they would do it slowly by taking over the academies, by taking over education and academia, by taking over propaganda, i.e., the entertainment industry and the news business, and over the Long March. And one of these miserable, violent, bloodthirsty terrorists from the 60s, his name was Mark Rudd, he said, "The true flowering of the 60s will come in the 90s when we've taken over the institutions." Well, Tom, he was only wrong because he missed the obvious. Once they'd taken over the institutions, they would then need one more generation to use those institutions to indoctrinate their social justice warriors. So if it's 30 years from the 60s to the 90s, Tom, what's 30 years from the 90s?
Right now.
Right. So it seems like this all came about so quickly and out of nowhere. But no, this has been their plan from the very beginning. All right. What is happening now is only that it's coming to fruition.
Yeah. Uh, Look, it's coming in the 1930s when this started. There were strains of this, but it certainly accelerated, and especially with the television age. So, where do you see the Democrat Party in the? We have about a minute left. Where do you see the Democrat Party going in the next decade?
Well, I think that They have to break away from the woke ideology, the true liberals, lowercase l liberals, who I'm a fan of. And we need to be careful because the uppercase L that we constantly call liberals, they're not liberal lowercase l. In fact, the lowercase l liberal is now in the Republican Party, because what we seek to conserve, the reason we're called conservatives, because what we seek to conserve is a liberal democracy. So they need to recognize that if they are truly liberal, they must eject their far left. By the way, just as we must reject and eject what some call the woke right. The Nick Fuentes, the Tucker Carlsons, the people who aren't conserving the values that we believe in. But they don't have control of our party. The woke left has control of theirs.
Yeah, I agree with you. And history doesn't talk well about a party recovering from that. The Democrats of the 1950s who wanted to nominate Eisenhower don't exist today. At least those in control of the party. Evan, I appreciate you coming on short notice, giving some reflection. Tell people where they can get a hold of your books and the like.
Yeah, I have several books, including The Woke Supremacy, because it truly is a supremacist movement, not allowing others to have a voice at all unless you are woke. So The Woke Supremacy, The Kindergarten of Eden, The Atheist Origin Myth, they're all available on Amazon, and I'm available to come speak if you can afford me.
Yes, you always have been pricey to me. All right, Evan, thanks so much, and we'll be right back with Politics in Perspective. Well, I hope you enjoyed those two guests. We're short on time here, so let's get to our political roundup and what I call the Democrats' Civil War. If you've been watching these debates, and Tony hit on it earlier, the Democrats in California are badly divided. And this is a preview, I think, of what you're going to see in other parts of the country, because you have the very far left. You have Antonio Villaraigosa trying to tell the truth. I don't know where that gets him, but what is impressing me is that they try and lift up a little bit and they take him right down. Swalwell, I mean, he knew we had all these problems, so I don't understand why he did this. But as soon as he got too high in the charts, they brought him down. Becerra, now it's coming out issues related to him, knocking him down. Tom Steyer, they're going after him as well. So the intensity of the Democrat Civil War is rather interesting. If we can bring up the next graphic and continue along with this, Becerra was the press brought up all these stories. Look, Tom Steyer doesn't have many friends in California politics. He doesn't really do anything for the benefit of others. The way the system works on the left and the right as well is you go out there and you help the people get elected or who are in power, and then you ask them for a favor and get it back. Well, Tom Steyer has never gotten along with Newsom for a variety of reasons. And so Steyer's out there on an island by himself, basically. And what do we find? Well, Newsom doesn't like Steyer, and Newsom arrayed his people behind Becerra. And then when we bring up the last graphic in this regard, you have Axelrod, who was Obama's guy, very establishment-oriented guy, said something rather amazing here, calling Axelrod the pillar of the Democrat establishment in California. Well, what does that tell you? That's an amazing statement. And it is true. because he is allied with Newsom, and therefore he's allied with Pelosi to a degree, although Willie Brown's endorsement of Steyer is somewhat amazing. But the establishment generally doesn't like Steyer. They got rid of Eric Swalwell. Becerra stuck his head up, and they're trying to push him, and now the rest are going after him. And we truly have, what is this Democrat civil war? And how is it going to play out? I would have thought they would have coalesced. It seemed like they were. But if they truly, in this days to come, go after Becerra and knock him back down, and you have Steyer spending the money to do that as well, well, you're going to get a Republican in the top two. And that's important for voter ID to pass, because you want someone at the top of the ticket to drive out the vote so that they can also vote for voter ID. But where does that leave the Democrats if they're this fractured going into the June primary? We'll have to see. Well, thanks so much for joining us on Politics in Perspective this week. Please grab my books and please join me at Substack. I'd like to grow that audience. I've written for years for everyone else, so I'm trying to develop my own brand, if you will, at Substack. I'm Tom Del Beccaro, and we'll see you next week on Politics in Perspective.